Hi, I'm Diane, your host of Epic Conversations, and we are so glad that you tuned in again. We have a special guest back, Jon Gemelke, and Jon grew up in Arizona and California, and he owns his own remodeling business. He also owns 2 commercial buildings. He's happily married. He has 3 children, and he is really an entrepreneur because Jon started his own ministry as a result of his testimony that we did on the first episode. But he has a ministry called Sock It To Him. And I go like this, but it really is, he's distributing brand new socks to the people on the streets of Colorado. So you listen to this story because we're going to continue and pick up where we left off and hear more about his ministry of distributing socks to the homeless people. Okay, so Jon, we were continuing where we were last time, and just for the people who may be tuning in this time, you grew up on the streets, 14 years old, and then from there you lived there many years, and then you went to a commune.
27 years.
27 years, all right. Then you were in the commune, and you lived there for 13 years, right?
Yes, ma'am. Off and on. Yep.
Off and on, and then you had a trucking business for a while, and all this time you're in and out of drugs to hide the pain.
I had 2 other companies too that I lost to drugs.
And okay, then that's lost 2 companies.
Yes, ma'am.
The drugs will do that, do you?
Yes.
And then we left off that you ended up at the the Springs Rescue Mission.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's where you had an encounter with Jesus,
Yes.
actually the second time.
Yes.
Because the first time was more of a mental assent. The second time was a deep down heart commitment.
Yes.
That's it, Lord.
Yes.
And you actually began to hear his voice.
Yes. Like I've said before, God is the last thing that I ever tried and the only thing that's ever worked for me. Yeah. And I remember people telling me they were praying for me over the years, and I just used to laugh at them.
And you said your wife, right? When she was, we ended with that.
So my wife, Tracy, I met her at church. But anyway, she told me as a little girl that she was taught to pray for her husband, and she said she never prayed for, she prayed for her husband's salvation. And it turns out that perhaps I was the one that she was praying. Obviously, I'm her husband. So she was praying for my salvation at a time when I was far, far away from God. I had no idea. But I can see over the years how God has saved me many times and kept me alive so that I could be sitting here today. Yeah, many times.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
I am too. Amen.
So let's start with you. Tell us about the church, when you went to the church and how all this ministry started.
In the rescue mission, of course, it's spiritual based, God based, and you read your Bible, and they have churches that were sanctioned. In other words, been checked out, the pastors and the churches that the men were allowed to go to.
Oh, okay.
And I checked out 2 other churches, and I picked a little church. The third church that I went to was a little church. At that time, it was called Westside First Wesleyan, over on Walnut and St. Verlaine on the west side. And so I remember going there, and I remember there was an older couple. They were probably in their 60s then, which not that old now.
I know.
But anyway,
we don't want to go there.
And they would make up soups and breads and serve homemade food for us on Wednesday nights. And for the men in a mission who were eating mission food, which wasn't the best, grateful for that we had food, obviously, but it was very nice, and I thought, oh, this is really nice. And so that was one of the things, was the love that I received at that church. Just the love that I received there just made me want to go back to that church. And so I stayed at that church through my mission time, and then I kept going back to that church after the mission.
And so when you went back to that church after the same one?
Okay, so I met my wife there. So
I was going to say, somehow you met your wife here somewhere.
My wife was upstairs. Her name was Tracy. I didn't even know her name. I'd been to her mom and dad's house with my daughter, because my oldest daughter had come back into my life since I got clean here. That's a whole nother story that we don't have time for now, but we could cover that sometime. But anyway, and so I had been to their home before up in Woodland Park, and I didn't even know Tracy was their daughter. I had no idea. Both their daughters went there. But I remember that Tracy, and I wasn't interested in her, but I remember, at least I didn't think I was. So, and I remember seeing her one day, and I said, you never talk to me. Because she was upstairs in the balcony where they were doing the filming and the sound, and we were downstairs. And she said, well, my name is Tracy. And she says, I happen to know that your name is John. And she says, I'll talk to you. And so we just talked. And that's all I wanted. I wasn't hitting on her. I'm just like, here's a person that never really talks to me. I thought she had her nose up in the air, and she thought she was better than everybody else. Turns out she's just an introvert. But anyway, so then I used to fold the bulletins. I used to go early on Sundays and fold all the bulletins for the church service. And so she started coming and hanging out with me during that time to talk. And then she went to China to see some friends in China who are over there, missionaries. And so she went to China undercover. Not supposed to say that anyway. So it's China. Christianity is illegal. So, and I remember missing her when she was gone. I was like, uh-oh, I need to check myself here. And I remember when she was coming back, I told my daughter, we were going back that Sunday, I told my daughter, I said, come on, we have to go see my future wife. And my daughter was like, what? And I'm like, does she know that? I'm like, no, she doesn't know that yet. So I kind of set that in motion.
You were prophesying
I was.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you know?
I'm
You
not
just
quite
knew?
sure. I just picked up on it. So I always, it's interesting. I always figured I was very specific. I wanted a Minnesota girl, and I wanted her to be somewhat. My wife, I say this and not about. I wanted somebody that was a little bit kind of plain, not too showy and too fancy, And my wife is beautiful, and she had beautiful hair. She just is, and she's a great person, but she is exactly what I asked for.
Wow, specific.
I was very specific. Yes.
Oh, that's so romantic, because she is a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
I saw a picture of
Yeah,
you
she
two on
is.
Facebook.
So, are you going to ask me about my sock ministry?
Well, you were going to talk about how God spoke to you, because you hear his voice clearly.
I do hear his voice clearly.
And that impressed me. How did you know? How did you start the sock ministry? Because you heard something
Well,
first.
I think you have to take a chance, right? I think you and I discussed this one other time. I think to build that relationship and to know that you're hearing from the Father, you need to take a chance and do the things that He's asking you to do. You need to step out and try it. Study thyself approved. Try it.
And didn't he say, don't go to Sunday school or something?
Okay,
like that?
so I was sitting. We were newly married, and I remember I'm a pretty restless guy. I'm a go. So it's hard to get me to even sit in a church for an hour, let alone 2 hours. And I remember I would do grocery shopping on Sunday mornings, and I remember seeing in my grocery shopping a lot of homeless people, because we lived on the west side of the Springs. Okay. And so there were just more homeless people over there. And I got thinking, I said, we sit in Sunday school class for an hour, but we don't do anything for anybody else. I know Sunday school is to study. I get that. But you can have study time other times. And I said, we're not doing anything for anybody else. And I brought that up. I said, we sit here for an hour. And I said, if you look out the window, you'll see people walking by that have nothing. They're homeless. And I said, what are we doing for them? We're only doing for ourselves. And I've always been that kind of guy that you want to go, give. So anyway, I remember hearing clearly in my prayer time, the guy said, I want you to go sit in Acacia Park, which is downtown Colorado Springs, and I don't want you to buy coffee, I don't want you to buy food, and I don't even want you to talk to anybody. I just want you to go and sit and pray for people as they walk by. I was praying for people from First Pres. You would see them walk by, and their nice dresses and their jackets, and they go over to the coffee shop and walk by, and they would just look straight ahead with shutters on, because there's homeless people there. But I would pray for them as well as the homeless people, and I didn't know why. And on the fourth week, but it was for 4 Sundays. I was very specific, for 1 month. And I remember telling my wife that. My wife started crying. And I said, what? She goes, well, I know that you don't like going to church. I know that you're restless. Does this mean that you don't want to go to our church anymore? And I said, I don't know what this means, babe. I said, but this is what I'm being led to do, so this is what I want to do. And she said, okay. And I said, I promise you, it's just for a month. So then on the fourth week, very specific, God said, I want you to buy socks, and next week I want you to pass out socks to those in need. And so I did. Even though I'd been praying for everybody, he said specifically to those in need. And I remember when we were having that conversation, I remember being the guy that was asking if I could take a shower and go in, and I've been wearing my socks all week, and all you could smell was my feet. You get me in a closed room, and all you could smell was my feet. And I remember being that guy. And I'm like, okay, so it definitely makes sense. And I remember the great response I got. I had only bought 2 packs of socks. They went really quick, but guys were like, wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Like, why would you do this? And I remember specifically saying, because I was asked to do it. And I just left it at that. And so then I kept giving out socks. And
now, were you going to church, just skipping Sunday school?
I was skipping Sunday school.
Later?
I told my wife, I said, look, just give me that hour from 9 to 10, and I would go downtown, and I'd pass out socks. But then it was turning out that I was giving out 50, 60, 100 pair on Sunday mornings. And we were doing this out of our own pocket. I did the math, and we think we spent about $13,000 the first couple of years to get with buying socks, because I wasn't asking for help with the socks. We were doing it ourselves, and then getting the nonprofit started as well, which it's just money, right? So it's okay. It all comes from him, and he asked me to do it, so it's perfectly fine. Yeah, I was okay with that.
Wow. And so all this time, now you have a nonprofit organization.
We do. We have a nonprofit called Sock It To 'Em, and it's Sock It To 'Em with two O's, and it's because it's more than a pair of socks. And I was trying to get it in there so people would say, why is it T-O-O? Because it could just be 2-O-E-M. And I said, because it's more than a pair of socks. And the more a pair of socks for me is, I get to pray for them, but I don't pray to them out loud. I just pray for them. And it's about showing them the love of God. The reason I'm doing it is because of the love, to show them that they're cared for. And it's a small act, but they're very responsive to it.
What do they say?
So I've had people tell me that they don't have frostbite because of the socks that I gave them all winter long, because they have clean, dry socks. And I do go out specifically on days after it snowed to make sure that I get out early, and because I know that there's more need for the socks because people have wet feet.
Because you've lived on the streets before,
yeah.
so you know.
27 years off and on the streets, homeless and addicted.
And now God, this thing has impressed me, how God specifically tells you instructions, but he did not tell you to pass out like booklets.
No. And he didn't tell me to preach to them either. He said, just love people where they're at. Just show them love by giving them socks. I'm not a pastor, and I'm not equipped to do that, and that's okay, and people are. I've been asked to give out socks, and I happily do so.
And there's a message in that alone, because if you were specific with your wife,
yes,
in giving God instructions,
yes,
and he's specific to you in
yes,
giving instructions.
yes.
It's like you're staying in your lane. You're only, like Jesus only did what he saw the Father do and said what he heard the Father say, and
Amen.
that's what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah,
I
amen.
think that's awesome.
Thank you.
And people can donate to your ministry.
Yes.
We'll put the information
Yes.
up on the
absolutely.
website.
So we don't take any money. We don't wear any of this. All donations. If you don't want to buy socks, that's fine. Then we'll go buy socks, and all the money goes 100% to the ministry of giving out socks. Yeah.
I think that is awesome.
There's no. I'm not getting paid, so I don't get reimbursed or anything like that, which is perfectly fine. God has really blessed us in many, many other areas so that we can continue to do what he asks us to do.
Wow. Are there anything, final words that you have to say about the people that you meet, the ministry, what other?
Well, I'll tell you, some of these people, they will, I've had people make me cards, some of the homeless people. and draw me cards, and that means a lot to me. At Christmas time, though, and that means a lot. I had a guy that would never talk to me. He would never say a word to me. He would just come up and put out his hand for a pair of socks, and he wore the big and tall socks. So I've gotten to where I know a guy's, I look, and I know the size shoes that I know what size socks. So I have to buy special socks that are size 12 through 15 and they're a little bit more expensive, but we don't mind. And those are for the guys that need the bigger socks. And he never talked. He was very well kept. He was homeless, been homeless, and in fact, I still see him. He is running a different part of town now. He's not downtown anymore. But then one year he gave me a card, and he had written out this card, and he said, "I want to thank you for all these years for being there and handing out socks to me when I needed them." And that kind of stuff is very touching. That means a lot. Because if you make me a card, I'll keep it. If you buy me a card, it goes in the round file. Anyway, that's my little thing. But anyway, no, it means a lot to me. And I've had them. There's a lady that I know now. Her name is Rebecca. And Rebecca and I go back many, many years. And she was on the streets, and she was an alcoholic. And she was on the streets, and I used to give her socks. I don't remember her. But she said every week I knew I could go downtown on Saturday, because I was hitting the streets then Saturday morning, or Sunday, excuse me, at the Marion Soup Kitchen across the street. Marion Soup Kitchen wouldn't let me hang out on their property and give out socks. So I had to stand across the street. So, okay, got your rules, that's fine. And so her name was Rebecca. It turns out years later, Rebecca, we meet, and she happens to work for, she works for somebody that I know, and she says, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "Years ago, you used to give me socks on the street." And she said, "You helped me out a lot." And she's clean and straight now and got her kids. But so those are kind of stories. You'll hear those stories, and it's very interesting. And her and I, we text and talk from time to time now. And we still see each other once a month, because she comes to one of the boards that I am. She's their secretary. So anyway, you'll get stories like that.
That's beautiful to hear stories like that, of how people's lives are being changed.
Yes.
And to think just with a pair of socks.
Just a pair of socks
But
starts that
that's
relationship.
That's it.
Yeah.
But that's what God told you to do.
Yeah.
Very specific.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, yes.
This is
Absolutely.
Powerful. I mean, I'm sure you could go on and on about stories, but we're...
Yes, we have a lot of stories.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Jon, for being on the program
You're
and
welcome.
sharing your heart and your testimonies and your stories with people.
Amen. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you for joining us. I mean, this is powerful stories of people's lives being changed by handing out new socks. And it's just amazing that, well, here, we will do a donation to your ministry right here for someone to have a new pair of socks.
Wool socks.
Yeah, the wool ones and heavy duty. So, and you're welcome to put all the information about Jon's ministry on the website if you want to buy a pair of socks or give a donation so they can buy some new socks to help people and transform lives. We so appreciate you. And we look forward to seeing you next time. And in the meantime, have an epic day in the Lord. Hi, I'm Diane Grubus, and I've started a ministry, and I want to bless you. I'm so excited about it. DianeGrubus.com. Go to the website and check out all the wonderful things that we have in store for you. We have some great epic conversations with some powerful guests, and some teachings, free downloads. And we would love to have you join us, love to have you partner with us. We appreciate you, and we want to hear from you. So check out the website, and thank you.